Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Mike again from BavhausTV, and today in the shop we have an F10 535i. We're going to do a tune-up on it with spark plugs and coils. Specifically, what we're going to do is put in one step colder spark plugs, and we're going to gap them to 0.02 of an inch, as we have a downpipe and a tune on this car. So let's get to it. Alright, so on the F10, this might be on different chassis, one of the oil cooler hoses is kind of clipped to the cover, so you can kind of just stick a screwdriver in here and pry and pull that out, and then you can pop this out. It's got a little white marker on where it's supposed to go. At that point, you have two tabs up front that you want to pull off, and then once you get it past here, you're going to slide this out. Now, one thing I like to do, and I definitely advise you guys do, is take these and remove them now, because at least now you'll have them. When you go to take this pipe out, these will fall out and you might not be able to find them, and then this will rattle. So get these out beforehand and just put it back when you go to put the cover back on, and you'll have no problems there. So on the driver's side of the air box, you're gonna have these tabs here that actually hold this grommet that holds these wiring harnesses in place. So we're just gonna push them up. Just be gentle with them because they do rip pretty easily. And just move them to the side. With the flathead screwdriver, we're gonna go here and undo the airbox, the intake tube. Once you get that far, you can pull up from under here and then remove the airbox. So right here it came out with the pipe that goes kind of down to the snorkel. You can remove it here and put this back, but yeah, it just slides in down there underneath the hood latch here. If it comes off like that, you can take it out. It's probably gonna need to be moved anyways when we put this back in, so. Over here you have two grommets, or three actually. This one's just missing. So 1, 2, and 3, which connect to the top of the intake manifold. So you have 1, 2, and 3. So these are the places you're gonna pull from. If you feel resistance there, as long as you have these off, just keep pulling, it will pop off. So the PCV breather element on these N55s is just a horrible design, and they always break, so be gentle with it. First, we're going to kind of get underneath this clip, pull up on it, and pull out the connector for that heating element. Now the heating element here, you can tell is already broken, somebody taped it up. So what you're gonna do is there should be a tab here, should be a tab underneath, and there's two on either side. So what I normally do is just get behind those tabs and apply some tension from the back as I release them, and then I'll just leave it alone like that. Over here, you have this breather for vacuum, which we're gonna pinch and pull out, and we can just move that aside. It is a hard line, but it doesn't really get too hot, so normally it doesn't break. Just be gentle with it regardless. Next, you have a flathead down here. We're just going to go and release that. Okay. And now the intake pipe, or the turbo inlet, here has a 10mm bolt. We're gonna remove that as well. This is a coarse thread, it's pretty long. So let's remove that 10mm. And there's that coarse thread bolt. Very specific to this. So if it's missing or in the wrong spot, you know that one's supposed to be there. All right, last thing we need to do before we can remove it is actually go back here and remove our mass airflow sensor, which sometimes likes to stick, so you could just take a pick and push on this tab from underneath and it'll get it out. Once you have that done, you're going to wiggle this guy out, make sure it gets past fine. Pull it up over, be very gentle with it. It's a good thing that if you're watching this beforehand, have one of these on hand. Buy one of these, I'll try to put the part number in the description, but these break religiously. Like if you don't have one, it might screw your day up. This person just ended up taping it, but it might have even been me, to be completely honest. But in a pinch you can tape it, but not always possible. Okay, and then right back here, you have one more of those rubber grommets on this intake tube, which you just gotta pull through, and it actually stayed down there, so you gotta take it out and refit it. One thing you wanna do immediately is go to the turbo inlet and close it up with a bright colored rag that you're gonna remember about. Leave it out so that it doesn't fall in, and that's just gonna be a good reminder that you need to remove it before you put everything back together, but also keep stuff out of the turbo inlet. Might have saw we just dropped the clamp immediately while removing it. Of course, we knew where it went, but things like that can happen and they can fall into the turbo inlet and ruin the engine, or at least the turbocharger. So just do this as a precautionary tool and it works pretty well. Next, we're gonna remove this cover here. What I normally do is I push down and then pull from the sides, on both sides, and then you're gonna pull this up and out like that. Once you have that out of the way, you can start removing these. Over here, these kind of stack on top of each other, so the big one goes over the medium-sized one, and then the small one goes in the back, like that. You just move that to the side. Back over here, there's actually a tab right here. So it's like a spring-loaded piece of plastic that you want to push on from the back. I don't know if you can see what my middle finger is doing right there. and I don't know if you saw that just released, and that allows this to lift. So just do that, don't pull it up because it's still screwed in on the other side. If you think that's it, you're gonna break it. So I just release it a little bit. We're gonna go get those screws out over there, and then we can fully remove that. All right, so right in the corner on the other side, you have two T20s, you might have two 225s, or you might have a mix of them. So just be careful. I don't think this is supposed to be like this, but ours is. So I'm gonna go grab a T20 to get that other one out. Okay, once you got those two out, oh, I removed the wrong one. You can leave that middle one in place. It's actually this bottom one down here that needs to be removed. So it's the two on the either side. I just couldn't see it from where I am at. So we're just gonna put that other one back in a second. But that could be why they're mismatched. Like the 20 should be on the outside and then the 25 should be in the middle. And then now you can remove this, just like that. Next you're gonna remove this piece here. This is just some insulation, and just gently remove it. So now what we have to do is remove the O2 sensors. So just pinch this and pull this guy out. So you don't have to worry about these mismatching them because one of the O2 sensors will have 5 plugs and the second one will have 4. So you can't put this one in here, it won't go in. So you can just leave them, you don't have to mark them, and then you can remove the wiring from here. And as you can see, the O2 sensor bracket sits in the way. So we're just gonna take a T30 to this screw here. Now we can begin removing our coil packs. So just pull up on each one until the connector pops out. Grab the connector by the plastic, not by the wires, and pull out. You'll see that N55 stagger them like backwards, up, forwards, backwards, up, forwards. So just remember that orientation. It also is casted into the head. The wires might go around, so be careful when removing them. They don't yank on anything. Now starting back at the front, get your finger through the hole and pull up. You can see these are Delphis. Okay, so in this situation where they get a little tight, we'll take an extension, put that extension through, and we'll pull it out like that. So that's cylinder 2. Try not to pry on anything, it's all plastic up here, so just pry against your own hands. 30. 4, 5, 6. No oil on any of them, so we know the valve cover's in good shape. Now we can remove the spark plugs. All right, so we're gonna start up front. These are 12-point spark plugs, so you're gonna need a 12-point socket specifically for it, skinny. And then I'm using a wobble extension. I'm gonna let it wobble. And then I'm gonna use my long ratchet just to break free. It's all right, loosen resistance. Here that has some resistance. We might actually fully remove it with this. There's a slight angle at the bottom of these spark plug tubes, and they kind of create that squeaky resistance because you're pulling up like on multiple angles. Okay, 1. 2. Okay, so in the rear, you're gonna need a shorter one. All right, and then now we're just gonna go with a magnet. Start pulling these out one by one. So that's 1, you can tell these are old. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, so now let's go to the workbench and grab our one-step coulter spark plugs. So for an N55, the 9706 NGKs will be one-step coulter spark plugs, and for N54s, they'll be two-step coulter spark plugs. Something for you guys to know if you were wondering. All right, so these are the 97506 NGK laser iridium premium spark plugs. Again, two-step coulter for N54, one-step coulter for N55, and for either engine, you'd need 6 of them. So this is the gap that you need to change, and it's actually right here between these 2 points, that little needle there, and that node right there. So on the inside of this node, there is a piece of iridium, and where most people would take a gapping tool like this and put it up into there and kind of pull the gap open or close it just by pushing it against something. The problem that comes with that is you actually start damaging the iridium and the quality of the spark plug. So it's not entirely preventable, because even scratching it with what we're going to do with feeler gauges isn't perfect. One thing I want to really say that I feel like a lot of people don't really realize is you can't just buy 1-step Kohler or 2-step Kohler spark plugs and put them in the engine and expect them to run well. The reason you're putting these in when you have a higher boost application with more modifications is to prevent carbon buildup and to prevent stuff like engine knock, detonation, and other issues that can come from having higher boosts with stock accessory parts or parts inside the engine. So somewhere on here, I forget, it says pre-gapped, do not gap, and the amount of people that I see that just put these into their cars and say, oh, they're pre-gapped. The part that is not understood there is that these are pre-gapped for the spec of the spark plug as it's sold for its original intentional use. Let's say these 2-step Kohler spark plugs for an N54 are most likely like a stock spark plug for an N20 or an N26. I might be mistaken there, but just for example, which I'm pretty sure that is the case though. On that engine, this is the proper gap, and that's why on the box it says that it is pre-gapped, do not gap, it's gapped. But since we're taking this spark plug that's not meant for this engine and putting it in a different engine, we're ignoring wherever it says pre-gapped, do not gap, and we are gapping them because these need to be at 0.02 of an inch, or it's like 0.0508 millimeters or something like that, but we're gonna do it in inches. So I'm gonna try to find it somewhere here, because the amount of times that someone has pointed out to me, no, they're pre-gapped, and they're wondering why their car's misfiring or running like crap after doing 1-step Kohler spark plugs, it's because these are not made for this car. You need to adjust them to fit in the car. Right here, there's an image that's no gapping, right? So we're gonna gap it, but you can see how that one has the X over the style that you pry on. That's why we're gonna use a very specific tool to do this, because they're relatively cheap. This one's made in China. I think it came off Amazon. And this is a spark plug gapper. So this, in theory, contactlessly adjust that gap so you don't have to actually like push it down on something. But what I like to do is get the spec that I want. I'll show you guys how I do this, because it's not as easy as it seems. So somewhere here there's going to be 0.02. I mean, we could do 0.020. Yeah, right there. So then 0.508 millimeters, that should be the spec. And get that out. And what we're going to do is we're going to find that spot that we like. I'm also going to get another set of feeler gauges because I know I have them. That might be more spot on in inches. So here I can see I can fit inside that gap, and the back of this is actually touching that iridium base. So you want to be very gentle when you do this. And as we tighten this, we're going to get to a point, it's usually like one good turn, where I can no longer fit this in. So right at that point, what I'm going to do is actually turn it a little bit more, because it is a spring metal. It is going to kind of spring back a little bit, and I just know this from experience. And then loosen it up, take my feeler gauge, and see if it fits. So right there, it fits. I can feel both sides making contact, but there's no resistance. That's pretty much where the gap is. It could even go a little bit more, and I'll show you what I mean by that. See, so it springs back the second you let off it. So we're just gonna give it a little more than we gave it before. And right there, it is pretty sticky. So we can put that one to the side for now. We can revisit them all again later. What I'm gonna do quickly is just go grab another set of feeler gauges and just double check. So if you have it available, I would always double check with the second set of feeler gauges. So this one has multiple, I think, grades depending on the side. So just make sure you're measuring if you have one like these or like this on the right side. So here you can see that it's making contact. I can't move it up or down. And that means that these two are relatively similar in spec. Problem is with these, when you actually overuse them, you start scratching them to fit them into the size. Like, so 0.020 is down here. You can see all the wear. I don't know if that's true anymore, if that's actually 0.020 or if it's less. That's why I don't really trust these. Also, you don't really want to use it. You don't have to. Okay, so let's go back to the second one. Yep, right there. And I kind of have a feel for this after doing so many. But okay, this one's perfect, where it goes in and then it has the resistance to actually hold it, but then I can take it right out. That's the perfect gap in my opinion. If you know better, say it in the comments, but I'm pretty sure that that's best case scenario. So I'm gonna try to get that with this. Before I move on, I'll probably just make sure they all feel good. Yeah, okay. I'm happy with that. And I like to place the electrode up so I can actually see how much it's coming in. Struggling to find that word earlier. I said node, I meant electrode. Okay, so in this situation, I overgapped it a little bit. Okay, so here is where I'll show you guys how to fix this. So if you look at that electrode, you should be able to see the little iridium tab. And in this case, it is the entire bottom of it. So we are gonna put this here and pull a little bit. Okay, we can open that gap up pretty good. So that's why it's a good thing to still have this, just in case you overgap, because obviously you don't want it to gap too much. Let's see how that is. Okay, I think that's good. A little bit more. Do a little quarter turn. Beautiful. Perfect. One thing to note is that these should be changed every 15,000 miles now, or whenever you start experiencing some issues with spark plugs. Change all 6 at once, don't just change one, and normally do coil packs with it, because why not? Especially if you use a certain company that warranties them. Right there, so you can see how it has that resistance and then comes out. It's like beautiful. Okay, double check them all, now that you have a feeling. Gonna add a little bit to this one. Perfect. This one's like right, it needs a tiny little bit. Perfect. Perfect. Tiny bit more. One thing I do want to mention is that sometimes you can change the gap, put it in the car, and then when you go to remove it, you can check the gaps, and the gaps might be different. So sometimes, only if I have issues, what I'll do is pull the spark plugs back out, and instead of buying new ones and doing this all over again, just re-gap them and do all 6. And after a couple heat cycles of you changing the gap and them getting hot and cold, they'll kind of like to stay where they are. They should right now, but sometimes they don't. So if that happens to you, don't panic. Just try that before buying new ones. Let's go put them in the car. So we're gonna take our spark plugs now, drop them into each cylinder. Just use my handheld little wrist ratchet, get them in. You can see where it kind of starts to bind up, and that's the socket on the inside of the spark plug, not the spark plug. Okay, so that's tight. Okay. And now we're going to torque them all to 23 Newton meters. And I don't use any grease. I don't think you should either. It's 24, it's fine. All right. So next I'm going to grab the coil packs and just start reinstalling those. Same spot that we removed them from. Just going to work my way back. Make sure that they're all the way down. You'll kind of hear them seep. I like to put the connectors in first and then push them down. Okay, one more. All right, so that's all done there. Now we can start reassembling everything else. So now that we have that all finished, we're going to take our bracket for our O2 sensors. That back like this, and that's gonna go down here, lower spot, and that's gonna have the T30 holding it in place. Okay, we'll put this connector back into the bracket. cable. It should just kind of snap into place. There we go. Grab our O2 sensors. Put them back together. And back in. Just like that. Oh, before I forget, I'm gonna pop this guy off of here. I'm gonna put this back on next. There's a little pump, you gotta put it on over there. And then over here, it's gonna go over this one. So just like that. Nice. Everything's nicely covered. Next, we're gonna grab this bracket and put that back. Snap it into place back there. It's gonna hold it nicely for you. We have those T20s and that T25. Remember, we just messed one up, so that's the only reason we have them both out. So put this back in here. Okay, next we can start putting these cables back in. That one goes in the back. The medium one goes in the middle. And the large one goes up front and then on top. Gotta get this cover slid back in properly. So slide it down underneath the tabs here and then press. Next, this piece is gonna go back in. Just wanna get this back into here. I'll probably do the screwdriver off camera. All right, so now we can remove our rag. I'm going to, oh, don't forget your clamp. We're gonna put our clamp back on. There's a place that locks in. So I'm going to put the inlet back into that boost pipe and align this breather hose up properly. Okay, gonna pop that on. Go back here. Pop that on, pop this breather in. Okay, then tighten up that hose clamp with a flathead. Again, it has like a little spot where it's supposed to go. Just gonna tighten that up. Take our heating element connector, plug that back in. Grab the 10 mil from here, start feeding that in. Tighten that back up. Okay. Mass airflow sensor, plug back in. Breather hose, or vacuum, back to the charge pipe. Air box, push these out of the way. We're gonna go into the charge pipe, kind of connect. I don't know if you guys can see fully. Get you over here. So I just got it into the charge pipe. Now we're lifting this to kind of fit this back into place. Making sure all of these 3 points that meet properly, and they did. And now this goes on the inside of that air box. It's a little intake tube. So just want to make sure it's in right. All right, so before I was saying that this would potentially give you trouble, and it did. So you gotta just make sure that the little fins here on the intake tube are all inside of this tube here. And then it should just slide in after that. Okay, there we go. So that's how it goes. Okay, gotta tighten up this clamp up here. Take our 3 cable connectors, put them back into the airbox bracket. And they go in order: small, medium, large. Just gonna double check this. There we go. That was a little off. Okay, perfect. So now what we can do, put our grommets back into our charge pipe and take the engine cover, put the rear of it into those 2 dowels, push down on the front, should just line up. And then the last thing we have to do is put that oil cooler hose back into that spot. Engine cover, And now we're all set. So that's how you do spark plugs and coils and gap them on an N55. In this specific situation, the disassembly and reassembly was on an F10 535i. Hope you found this video useful. Thanks for watching BavhausTV.